Insurance Guest Line. Steve Robertson, good morning. Are you on your way to Tempe, Arizona?
Nah, that'll be Friday. I'm not driving this time, so that ended up being a 5-day trip. So I'm flying out Friday, flying back Sunday. Gonna get out there and go see the sights and enjoy Tempe a little bit, cover a ball game, hopefully a win, and
Yes.
we'll head back to Stark Vegas and then maybe get another win next week. So.
Okay. Is it? I heard the team's leaving on Thursday. Is that accurate?
That is
true?
correct. Yeah, and that, which I think is smart, and I think a lot of that too is your ops people kind of learning from the trip to Arizona 2 years ago when they came back and then went down to LSU and we're in a hangover. I mean that's, I think you live and learn, and I think Levy's doing a good thing by listening to the people that were here and said, hey, here's what happened. Let's see if we can't fix that. So yeah, they're leaving on Thursday.
I like that, Steve. I do. Levy's new. All that, what you just described, kind of get the lay of the land out in Tempe. Now, Steve, the line is crazy at -6.5. This is a game Mississippi State should win. They have a better roster. I'm not saying it's a good roster, but they have a better roster, and they have more athletes, and they have a better quarterback. Sam Levitt may end up being great, but Chapin can ball. But none of this is guaranteed with the work in progress and the transition and the rebuild that they're in. So, do you agree with that Mississippi State should go out and win this game? I actually think they should be favored, but I'm fine either way. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been expecting State to win it, and of course, after watching Arizona State against Wyoming, I mean, it's clear they're an improved team, but there's only so much you can learn about a team in week one. And of course, Wyoming threw 2 picks in that first quarter that enabled Arizona State to get up 17-0. And it becomes a different ball game, right? And so, and Kenny Dillingham kind of alluded to that yesterday in his post-practice comments, and he said they were having a tough time getting kids to practice yesterday. He said, up until the final 6 periods of practice, it was like a 1-11 practice. He seemed very, very frustrated. Then you watch the player interviews and, they're all just kind of expecting to win the ball game this weekend. It's like, oh yeah, it's going to be a blessing. It's going to be great. I can kind of sense the frustration of the coaching staff and then kind of see the root cause. And Dillingham said it's like we won the Super Bowl and everybody's walking around here like, it's not a big deal. And they've never beaten an SEC opponent, and they're 0-5 all time against the SEC.
Oof.
And the media kept bringing that up yesterday. It's like, hey, we've never beaten an SEC team. How would that feel? And if I'm Dillingham, I want the media to be quiet about that, right? I mean, it's like, obviously those guys weren't on any of those teams that lost those ball games, but you start planting those seeds, and then all of a sudden you go out and you don't have a good practice, and it's already Wednesday, And I think I like what I'm hearing from the Mississippi State side. I think Levy's handled it really well. The players are like, hey, they're a very improved team. We're going to have to bring our best effort. And so as far as like what's being said, the war of the words, right now I'd say State plus 20, just based on what they're saying. I'm not expecting State to go win that game plus 20, but I think State's head appears to be in a better place, at least as of Tuesday.
Dillingham's gone in and they've had all kinds of transfers and flipped their roster trying to figure it out too. They're just like Mississippi State is. I mean, don't you agree, Steve? Arizona State's a major work in progress.
Oh, I do, and I think it's 60 new players out there. I mean, we look at the State roster and say, wow, they really flipped us. Look at what Arizona State has done. And so that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because you get an influx of talent, but you got to develop some cohesion. And sometimes it takes a little time. And, success is often the enemy of innovation, right? I mean, you go out and you beat Wyoming, and then you start thinking, okay, well, hey, we're good, And so I think that's the challenge for, when you haven't won in a while and you win, sometimes you lose a little bit of your edge, And so I think it's going to be a war. They're expecting a school record for student attendance. They missed it, I think, by 12 last week. And so with an SEC team coming in and them getting a big win last week, it's going to be a wild environment. I can't wait to get out there and kind of experience all of it.
The offense, did it exceed your expectations against Eastern Kentucky, or did you expect that?
I think it was a little bit ahead of what I expected. Like last year, with the Southeastern game, you had so many misfires in that first half, and you said, well, it's a new system, and they got it going in the second half. Well, this is a new system too, and you score on the third play of the game, and the game was essentially over at halftime. And so I think Levy and those guys, maybe exceeded expectations by a little bit, because I didn't see a lot of the misfires or the first game type jitters, other than a couple of pre-snap penalties, and you can clean those things up. So yeah, you're going to have to play even better this week, I think, because it's a Power 5 opponent on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment, and the best way to shut them up is score early, right? And so Lev and those guys are going to get out and go get it done as best they can. But the tempo thing, I think, is interesting. Speaking to Kevin Coleman yesterday, he goes, the game actually felt easy compared to what we do in practice when it comes to tempo, because you got TV timeouts, you got stoppage of play. Well, you don't have any of that in practice. And so I think the temperature out there is going to be tough, but you're playing at night. It cools down some at night. But I think the tempo could prove to be a real asset for Mississippi State.
Okay. Coleman and Mosley. Let's talk about Mosley. You and I talked about him last week. And you mentioned, hey, this is a guy who had a Tennessee offer out of high school, and they had some turnover. He ended up at Northwestern and didn't like it. Got to Mississippi State. Things never really clicked. Granted, Mississippi State's been through all kinds of craziness. Steve, I thought he looked pretty damn good last weekend.
Yeah, I did too. And the fact that he's starting, when you consider all the guys you bring in from the recruiting class and in the portal, and then there's a guy that's a returning player that ends up not only starting, but scoring the first touchdown of the Jeff Levy era. And I think he's got what you need. I think it's just a matter of just kind of figuring him out, is like, what's his best role? And when it comes to offense, I don't think anybody should second guess Levy. He'll have the guys in there in a position to make plays. And I think Jordan's the guy that really benefits from the coaching change.
I think as much as they did, and they didn't even get Sadu going, he had one that was right there. He had some alligator arms. But if they get him rolling, they could really get going. What's the latest on Kelly as far as playing?
Well, based on interviews yesterday, he did practice this week, and I'm sure he's no contact. Why would you risk that in practice, right, when you need that guy? But, he's wide receiver 1, didn't play last week, and, Levy didn't rule out him playing on Monday. He said, we'll just kind of have to wait and see how he goes. But he did practice yesterday, and so that's interesting. And also kind of on the injury front, Levy did say that there's a chance that Calvin Dinkins would travel with the team and possibly be a game-time type decision. And so he said, hey, get a little dinged up on Saturday, felt good on Sunday, felt even better on Monday. So if he progresses, I think you'll see him play this weekend too. And so I think for the most part, State's going to go out there and be healthy. Dinkins, the only guy that was helped from the field, and now there's talk about him playing. So, State should be full strength when they go play Arizona State. And they're a little bit dinged up too. And what's interesting kind of hearing the players talk is, they said they were kind of sleepwalking yesterday because we're still sore from the game. It's week 1, and so it'll be interesting, to see, State can sustain offensive production like they did last week, but also, too, be in a situation where they're the fresher team. I think it bodes well for the Bulldogs.
So Dinkins, boy, he went down for a while, and then he did kind of walk off on his own with just a little bit of help. That was a scary moment, wasn't it?
Well, it was, because, you lost him last year in the season opener. And he was helped from the field, but he did walk to the locker room under his own power, though he did have a noticeable limp. But, if it was anything, broken or torn or anything, that wouldn't have been the case. But, there's some guys, it just seems like it always seems to find them. And unfortunately, that's been him since he's been here. But extremely talented player, and you need him, I think, against this Arizona State running game. And if you watch Arizona State, too, they don't do a lot of vertical stuff. They run some zone read, they run some stretch, they do some bubble screens, they try to get you out in space and hope that you miss a tackle. And so it's not a lot of vertical, it's a lot of horizontal, but, the running game is interesting. for them. And they had 11 guys carry the football last weekend. And so they kind of did it by committee. But, we'll see. But it's not something where I think the secondary is challenged on the safety side. I think you got to get out there on the perimeter and make tackles.
Okay. Well, then let's go to Isaac Smith. He was everywhere last weekend. How did you grade his play from at the safety position for MSU?
Back to when you and I were talking about him as a recruit. I mean, I've always felt that he's an NFL guy. Provided he stays healthy and works hard, he is going to play football for a long time. And missed spring last year, played a little bit as a true freshman last year, kind of had to figure it out. And now it's 1 weekend, but he's leading the Southeastern Conference in tackles and then didn't even play a lot in the fourth quarter, And so, I think he's the guy that can be a real guy for us, but also, too, a guy that can be a leader when it comes to communication at secondary. And so, you're going to need him to play well, week in and week out. But this weekend especially, I think this is the most important game on the schedule for Mississippi State.
Agree.
And I think you have to approach it that way, too, because you lose this when you're chasing the season, right? You already feel like, hey, we're behind the game. We got to upset somebody. You win this game and you win next weekend against Toledo, well, you're 3-0 with Florida. Kind of a struggling Florida team coming to Starkville, which may be arguably the best environment that we've had maybe since, a couple of Egg Bowls ago. That's how significant this thing could be.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Anybody else jump out at you that you were like, I like the way they played or performed last weekend?
Well, I thought Albert Reese. Yeah, Albert Reese is the one returnee on the offensive side of the football that's starting. 10 of 11 starters are transfers, and Albert Reese is the lone exception. I thought Reese was really good, and I think when you go back and watch the tape, you can see he's kind of figuring some things out. I think that bodes well for this group. You got some experienced guys that transferred in, but Reese is a guy that Mason Miller said even back when they first signed him. He said, "Hey, this is a guy right here that I think people maybe undervalue him as a recruit, but this guy's a pro prospect." And I thought he looked it on Saturday, and granted, it's just one ball game, and we'll see how things go this weekend when they get out there to Tempe. But I think that's a guy to really watch on the offensive line, and he's a guy that can play multiple spots for you. It's like they had the guy go down, so they slide him over and put Bell in at right tackle, and so you kind of move ahead with that in mind, knowing that this is a guy that can help you to few positions.
All right. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. All right, real quick, if you had to put some money on it, does Kelly play at wide receiver this weekend? I know what you said earlier.
I wouldn't bet a lot, but I would bet for it.
Okay.
I think, again, it's one of those things, is he available? And again, too, it's like, maybe you get out there and kind of get into the flow of the game and see how things are going. It's like if you get out there and you get to an early start and you put some points on the board, maybe you're a little more careful with him. Maybe you keep his snap count down a little bit. But, I would expect him to play. I just don't know how significantly at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you.
See ya.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports, and the most important game on the schedule, because like he said, you don't have, you're not what Ole Miss is or Missouri, or Tennessee, some of the other teams that have emerged. You're a work in progress, which is okay. And you got to find a way to win on the road against a Power 5 team who may not be good, but you're not that spot where you just roll out the ball and just get the dub, like what Moorhead inherited or some of Dan's teams. Would Leach go out there and win? Yeah, but it'd be a different deal. Different roster, different, he's got more games under his belt. Jeff Levy's going to have to learn how to be a head coach and the ups and downs and getting hit in the nose and the adversity. And you're going to have to stay patient with him because you can't keep going through coaches. Post Dan, you've been through Moorhead, Leach, Arnett, now Levy. That's too many. So you got to get in the saddle, wrap the rope around the wrist, and stay with Levy. And you already know he can do the quarterback thing, which is unreal, really, because you had a chance to go 1-11 this year. I know that sounds crazy, but think about Florida State went and got DJ Uiagalelei. There were 2 more transfers over the weekend. I was like, meh. Shapen can ball. I will say this. the motto this week needs to be slide, shape, and slide. Y'all with me? Y'all want to say it with me? Slide, Blake, slide. Slide, shape, and slide. Because he is, you don't have anybody ready behind him. And he's the guy. But if he plays the whole season, he'll be considered one of the better quarterbacks, especially considering the team, one of the better quarterbacks around. I mean, if you dropped him at some other teams that have much better talent, I mean, think if Shapen was playing for A&M the other night. They beat Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's going to, I mean, especially.
Think if Shapen was playing for Clemson the other day. They don't beat Georgia, but they look a hell of a lot better on offense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, returning quarterbacks, obviously looking ahead to next year. I mean, he's going to be one of the top.
Well, if he gets the extra year, which they're crossing their fingers.
So what?
Well, I don't know. The NCAA is talking about ruling an automatic fifth-year period. So if that happens, he's good.
Wow. I got a guy playing in his 9th year the other day. Why
not? Sun Devil Macy says the leech worship is strong today. Well, first of all, he coached here. He's the Pirate. He was an icon and a big personality in college football long before he got here.
Yes.
What he did at Texas Tech and Washington State is nothing short of remarkable. The impact that he had on football at all levels, high school, college, and NFL, is insane to really if you really think about it, wrap your head around, brain around. If you think about it, read. Y'all know I loved his book, read it a couple of times. I got to hang out with him. I'm biased. I mean, for me, I loved him in 04, 5, 6 at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I loved him with Gardner Minshew at Washington State. I never knew he'd be here.
No.
I never knew that I would hang out with him.
Whoa.
I didn't know that. What?
Text message.
Oh.
Oh. This is an unnamed texter at the moment.
Oh.
It is. We do need a name for this texter.
So this sounds like KJ Costello 2.0. I love it. If you looked at KJ Costello and the way he played and he couldn't move out of the pocket,
right,
because he had no mobility, and you watched, which you probably haven't and most haven't, but I went back and watched some Baylor stuff from Shapen, and then you watched last weekend, and you think he's KJ 2.0, then I think you go ahead and ride with that, big dog.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with what Tom Luganville and others have said about it, about who he is and what he is. So yeah. I mean, I think it's not a stretch whatsoever. If Shapen's at A&M, they beat Notre Dame. I mean, that game was close, and A&M was awful on offense. I mean, they were atrocious.
Bad.
They really did look like Sly Croom, Ed Ogeron in 05 or 6. Pick your poison in this state. Clemson and Klubnik were not any good on Saturday. Shapen moves the ball more against Georgia. But I'm going to keep this, and we're going to go from there. But I don't think, first of all, stylistically,
wrong,
athletically, arm strength, mobility, dual threat, all that, comparing KJ Costello to Blake Shapen. I mean, KJ was the perfect Stanford guy. They recruited pocket passers who were, that's kind of no longer the thing now. You can't be that guy, a guy who just stands in the pocket like a statue. He still had one of the greatest games ever in the history of the state of Mississippi.
Absolutely did.
Against LSU.
Sure did.
I mean,
he lit him up.
He still had one of the best games in the history of the state of Mississippi, regardless of team or quarterback. And then it all fell apart the next week.
Because he was a Heisman hopeful immediately.
Didn't he get knocked out of the game the next week?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Barry Odom in Arkansas eventually knocked him out of the game, and then Will Rogers went in.
Right there for like 600.
Yeah.
God. What a game.
This Vols fan says, I will ride with Heupel and Nico. Nico's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Heupel and where Tennessee is and where Mississippi State is night and day. Heupel's going on year 4 or 5. They're a top 15 recruiter. Nico was a 5-star. Yeah, he's a good player. Y'all get to play NC State this weekend. You should take care of business and go from there. Wow, that was fast. All right, we'll be live from Dancing Rabbit Golf Club tomorrow. Bet 50 at the Sportsbook. Play award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club for $40. Bet 50, play 40. There you go. We are the Out of Bounds Show. Don't forget that Briarwood Wine and Spirits has Wilderness Trail Bourbon. They've got a barrel pick there. Wilderness Trail Bourbon, a barrel pick at Briarwood Wine and Spirits, 4949 Old Canton Road. Also, the show is driven by your next Nissan Pathfinder, Nissan Rogue, Cannon Nissan in Jackson. That's the crossover and the SUV, both with all new body styles, powered by Cannon Nissan in Jackson. See you tomorrow.